Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Startup Sense podcast. This is your host, Jonah Lupton. I have a very exciting episode for you today. First, if you are on iTunes or Google Play, just subscribe to the Startup Sense podcast, and that way you never miss an episode. Okay, so today's guest is Eran Shir. He is the co founder of a company called Nexar, and what they essentially are doing is building the world's largest kind of vehicle to vehicle connected network. To reduce the number of car crashes and increase road safety for hopefully millions of people. And this is kind of a nice segue into what's coming in the future with autonomous vehicles. But until then, their technology has the ability to save thousands and thousands of lives. And we're going to talk about all that in a second. They've raised about $14.5 million from a couple different investors. Well, actually, about five different investors. Some well-known VC firms like Slow Ventures, True Ventures, Mosaic Ventures, and Aleph, based in Tel Aviv. The company has three offices in Tel Aviv, New York, and San Francisco. And let's talk to the founder. What's up, man? How are you, Ron?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, man, for joining us. So let's just, before we talk about Nexar, what were you doing before you started the company?
Okay, so I'm what they call a serial entrepreneur. Nexar is my third startup. Before Nexar, I started back in 2007 a company called Dapper, which I ran out of San Francisco for a few years, and then I sold it to Yahoo back at the end of 2010. And then I was an executive at Yahoo for 3 years, both in the US and here in Tel Aviv. And after 3 years, I kind of left and started some time, a year of research that amounted to Nexar, actually. So that was sort of the most immediate things that I've done before. In general, I'm sort of a retired physicist. So I spend most of the 90s doing black hole physics and complex systems.
Jeez. You've been all over the place, man. Wow.
Yes. I can't say that I've built any kind of a career or any kind of organized path. I was just doing random work on stuff that interested me.
Well, you're probably the smartest person I've had on the show then. So kudos to you. What kind of research were you doing specifically before you started Nexar? Was it on road safety and crashes and whatnot?
Eventually it got to that, but it didn't start there. What me and my co-founder, Bruno, who is, by the way, much smarter than me, have been thinking about walking around is this realization that we had back in 2014 that for the first time, you can actually merge machine learning, deep learning with the physical world. Okay, so that was sort of the thing that captivated us, that kind of was in our mind as we were looking at things around IoT and machine learning and what you could do with it. And what we realized is that now I mean, middle to the end of 2014, commodity hardware, smartphones and other commodity hardware are strong enough to run machine learning on the edge. On the edge, that means not in the data center like Google does, but actually in the smartphone itself. And if that's possible, then you can do smart things in real time. Okay, that really was the key thing that we were looking at, and I'm sort of driving. I say, a car buff, as they call it. I'm really enjoy driving. So and so is my co-founder. But we realized that we're still driving the same way that our fathers and grandfathers did, with very little information about what's going on around us. And the other thing that we realized is that it's a huge gap between what's possible technologically today and what's available in the market. Okay, so, and that kind of caught our attention, and we spent a lot of time trying to figure out, can we solve the problem of car collisions at scale and do it cheaply and do it effectively and do it quickly? And that that ended up becoming Nexar.
So how did you guys? Okay, so and when did all this happen? When did you decide to start Nexar?
That was sort of towards the end of 2014, and we launched Nexar in January 2015. So right about there.
Okay, and when did you guys raise your first round of capital? Was it around that time? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
we raised it with the founding of the company.
Okay, and you raised it from Aleph out of Tel Aviv.
Yeah, the first investors in the company were Aleph and Slow Ventures. We raised a 4 million seed round. We also, have a few kind of really, really good angels that got in too. But by and large, that was our seed round.
And your technology is essentially what's the right word? Distributed through the mobile apps, right? Through smartphone app.
Yes.
Okay, so a customer that wanted to use your technology in their car to enhance their driving experience would download the app on, either their Android device or iOS device, right?
Yes, that's sort of the initial form factor. Obviously, it's not the only form factor possible. We actually discovered, funnily enough, that some of our users have installed Nexar in their car. Some of the cars today come with Android built in, and users just went and downloaded Nexar into their car, which was very amusing and interesting to us. But by and large, right now, our main distribution vector is as an app.
Okay. And are people mounting? Because I know you guys have kind of you're partly going after the consumers like us, and then you're partly going after professional drivers or commercial drivers, people that do ride sharing, taxi cabs, etc. Is it the same app for both?
Yes, it is the same app for both. We do have some unique customizations for fleets and the likes, but by and large, it's the same app.
Okay. So let's take us back to when you started the company. You raised the $4 million seed round or Series A round. You started to build your team. How long did it take you to build the technology before you guys were able to launch it to the public?
Okay, so we started the company in January, brought in the team around February, March, and in July we had a sort of a beta version out, first version out, still in private mode, and started deploying it in the field with professional drivers and some private beta testers. And then on February of last year, just about a year ago, we launched the app publicly on the App Store.
Okay. And how many people have downloaded the app so far? Are you able to share those numbers with us?
I can say that it's in the 100,000s number.
Okay. And how have you essentially gotten those 100,000 plus people to use the app? What's been your marketing strategy so far?
So I think we have two distinct paths to market. One is basically catering to the professional market, which is our primary focus right now and has been since we started. So these are Uber drivers or taxi drivers or truck drivers in specific cities like New York or San Francisco. So that's one addressable market that we go after, but then we do a lot of guerrilla marketing. We've done a lot of kind of walk in the field. We provide them with lots of value around insurance, discounts, and other things that they get if they use Nexar. And then we go after fleets. So we have fleet partners, both small and large. That's sort of one market, and it's a very cool market, very interesting, very challenging market. That if you manage to kind of crack it, it's a great market to be in.
Right, and it's probably easier. It's probably easier to make money off commercial accounts than consumers, right?
Yes, but that is not our primary concern at this point. It's more about how much value in terms of data and in terms of network density they provide. You know, a typical professional driver in New York would drive for 10 hours a day.
Oh, right.
You know, we have installations in taxis in Vegas where they do shifts, so every installation is like 20 hours a day. So these provide us with a lot of density, a lot of data.
Right.
Whereas if
I drive like 20 minutes a day total.
Exactly. So it's really important. I think one of the key insights in doing this in the field is trying to understand what is your KPI. And typically, your KPI won't be installs. Okay? And installs is actually a pretty lousy KPI for a startup, in my mind. You need to understand exactly what is the value that you get, what is the value that you give for every niche in the market, and then find the alignment, find the initial niches where you can really delight people and provide them with a lot of value, and in exchange get also a lot of value. And I think that's why we focused on that niche of the market to begin with. Now, separately, we have the app on the App Store, so we have lots of people all over the world that download it and use it, and that's always fun. You know, it's fun to see cows in India on the road. It's fun to see all over the world. I teach my kids geography by looking at Nexar videos, but that's currently not the primary focus.
This is Jonah Lupton, founder of the Lupton Group and host of the Startup Sense podcast. Are you struggling to find the right tech team to build your company's website or mobile app? Maybe you've developed a product but need help with your go-to-market strategy, including branding and marketing. Well, stop worrying, because my team at the Lupton Group can assist you with all of those needs. We specialize in helping entrepreneurs and startups of all sizes launch and grow their businesses. For a free consultation, you can email me at jonahlupton@gmail.com or visit our website at luptongroup.co. So I downloaded the Nexar app this morning on my iPhone, and the description says turn your iPhone into a community-based AI dash cam and join the connected driving revolution. Nexar protects you on the road by detecting, recording, warning you of real-time hazards. So maybe talk to us about some of that stuff. So what does the dash cam look like, and what type of value does that provide to the driver?
Yeah. So first of all, it looks very simple. You know, when you drive, I want you to be focused on driving and not deal with any buttons or complex UI. That's first and foremost, from a design perspective or user experience perspective, was an important factor in decision making. And what that means is that, for example, everything that you can do with Nexar, you can do by voice also. Like you can enable voice commands and start saying, "Hey Nexar," and do everything that you need. And on top of that, there are almost no buttons in the UI. You know, most of the things can be done with swipes and gestures and stuff like that, where the entire screen is a button. Because again, if you are not using voice, I don't want you to start squinting and looking for buttons. I want it to be extremely simple. So that is sort of the basic premise. Now, from perspective of value, we first of all provide you with a really great dash cam. Okay, so the basic value prop is a combination of a dash cam and a black box. What that means is that, you know, we'll detect events that you want to capture and immediately upload them to the cloud. Like, for example, if you got into a collision, if you've done a hard brake, or any such event, if someone, you know, is doing a hard brake in front of you and we detect that, all of this kind of stuff, more we immediately capture and upload to the cloud. On top of that, we kind of have a smart mechanism that manages storage and manages power. We make sure that we never use more than 50% of your free storage. So you can always use your phone without worrying that Nexar will take too much space, etc. And and we then get into the interesting stuff, right? So on top of the video, which is obvious, we've invested a lot in what's called sensor fusion. Okay? Sensor fusion is the art and science of taking a bunch of sensors like accelerometer, gyroscope, magnetometer, and the camera itself, and bringing them all together using algorithms to understand the world. And we've invested a lot in that for, in order to enable the network, and we can touch on that later. But what it gives you from the first second that you're using Nexar, even if you're the only one in your town that uses Nexar, is a really cool black box. If you get into a collision, we can reconstruct the collision. We will send you a report that says things like, you were hit at an angle of 70 degrees at a force of 3.4 G, and there's 30% chance that you got whiplash, with all the drawings that insurance companies really like. So you can kind of take that, tie it in a nice bow, and give it to your claim adjuster in your insurance company or your fleet manager, etc. So that's a really cool value prop. And then on top of that, we actually provide warnings. We provide what's called forward collision warning. That is the notion that you're driving on the highway, someone doing a hard brake, and you're distracted for some reason, and you don't notice it, and then we'll warn you that, hey, you better do something, or you're going to hit this guy, right? So that's one type of warning that we introduced. And what's unique about the way we're doing it compared to Mercedes or Lexus is we're not only using vision to do it, we are actually also using our network. So it could be that the guy that did a hard brake right now is 5 cars ahead, but someone on the Nexar network sees him and streams that information to you in less than 100 milliseconds, and you'll get a warning before you'll see the car ahead of you starting to brake. We launched that on November of last year, and it's live and being enjoyed by people in New York and San Francisco and Tel Aviv and other places.
Awesome. Now, you guys, even though you currently have Nexar customers or users in hundreds and hundreds of cities, right, around the world, you guys are still focused on major metropolitan markets, correct?
Yes, very much so.
So like New York, LA, Vegas, San Francisco, probably. So how do you guys get the word out in those cities in order to build up the density of users?
The largest thing is actually content. We have a lot of content. By a lot, I mean millions of driving hours right now. We have over 1 million events, crazy events, dangerous events, collisions, traffic violations, whatever you want. We've tagged over 1 million events. So we have a lot of content. It's very fresh. We get tens of thousands of events every week. And we create, lots of kind of videos and content that is highly distributable. Okay, if you go to our Facebook page, you see a bunch of these videos that get, each one of them getting hundreds of thousands of views and even more. So that's sort of one avenue. But I'd say the main avenue within those niches, within the pro drivers in Manhattan, is really word of mouth, because the stories that we have where we helped drivers are very captivating stories. These are not the most empowered part of society. Uber drivers or taxi drivers in a metropolitan area like Manhattan, they're typically immigrants or people that are really fighting to stay above the water. And then when something happens, like a collision, it's a huge disturbance. Sometimes it gets people into really, really bad places. And the fact that we can help them, and we have these stories day in, day out, is great for us. It's a great feeling, but it's also extremely powerful from a referral marketing perspective, because a driver that we got out of an arrest, for example, like we had a few weeks ago, or that we saved their livelihood because they managed to prove to the insurance they're not at fault, is someone that will then go and talk about Nexar all day to his friends, and we find that a lot of the traffic that we get, a lot of the users that come in have come through that.
Now, how big is your team right now?
We're about 40 people.
Okay, and you guys are in, I think I said in the pre-call, you guys are in San Francisco, New York, and Tel Aviv. I assume Tel Aviv is most of your technical people. Are you guys currently doing any hiring for the company?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What types of people are you hiring, and in which cities?
So in Tel Aviv, we hire lots of research engineers, research scientists, full stack engineers, pretty much the entire gamut. In New York, we're hiring people to the roles of city launchers, you can call it, and growth managers, as well as in the West Coast. These are primarily the main roles that we're hiring for.
Like you and I talked about a little bit before we started recording, is the future of autonomous vehicles and self-driving cars, and Google and Tesla and Apple, and I mean, they're pretty much all working on this kind of stuff, but who knows when it'll actually be here. I mean, it could be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road before we actually see this stuff on the road. So what are your thoughts on autonomous vehicles, and how does Nexar bridge us from there to from here to there, and then what kind of a part will Nexar play in that autonomous vehicle ecosystem?
Yeah. So first of all of the answers are correct. It's not either 3 or 5 or 10 years. It's both 3 and 5 and 10 years, each with its own use case. Okay. So in 3 years, you'll have a higher level of autonomy in specific cities and specific locations, typically as part of a network of vehicles, like Lyft or something like that. In 5 years, you might have additional use cases, et cetera, et cetera. So the most interesting thing for us, from perspective of autonomy, is who's going to manage the road? How are we going to manage the road? Because today, all of these companies that you mentioned and all of the startups that are dealing with autonomous vehicles are dealing with a specific question, which is, how can I get a car from point A to point B without killing anyone on the way, right? That's like when you talk about the race towards autonomous vehicles, that's at the end of the day what people are working on. And that's great. But then immediately after we'll solve this question, there'll be another question that will pop up, which is, now how do I manage 10,000 such vehicles on the 101? Okay, when there are like 100,000 other vehicles that are still driven by humans. Right? How do I manage the hybrid road? Okay, and for us, this is the most interesting challenge, which is we cannot continue into the autonomous world assuming that the management of the world will be as it is today, which is emergent. Okay, we think that is not going to happen. Actually, what we think is we're going to need air traffic control for the road. Okay, just like planes have air traffic control that tells them what to do and where to go and which path to take, and make sure that no one collides into anyone. We believe that you're going to need such air traffic control system for the road. It's going to be very different from the air traffic control system that we have today for planes, which is very centralized, because there are only 10,000 planes in the air, but there are 230 million cars on the road in the US. And we are building that actually with Nexar. We're building this layer that can tell you exactly what everyone's doing and manage the road and optimize it first for safety, but then also for yield and for other values.
Will Nexar be that network possibly that connects all these different autonomous vehicles to each other so that the autonomous vehicles from Tesla can talk to the autonomous vehicles from Apple, that can talk to the ones from Google and to Ford and GM? I mean, because something's going to have to connect them so they can all see each other and talk to each other, right?
Yeah, totally. And that's exactly what we're doing, in fact. In fact, cool. The Nexar cars, the users of Nexar are doing that right now. As we speak, those cars, through the app, talk to each other, becoming aware of what's happening beyond their line of sight and can react to that. And when you go to autonomous vehicles, they can react even further, right? They can do platooning. They can move from traffic lights to traffic flows. There's a bunch of new things that are possible when you network autonomous vehicles.
I mean, so in some ways, what you guys are doing right now is almost the proof of concept for the bigger opportunity down the road. I mean, can you look at it that way, or is that unfair to say?
I think I think the right way to do it is like, we want to get rid of car collisions today, and we think if we'll network enough cars, we'll be able to do it today. And we are very, very excited on playing a bigger role in the future. But we are very bullish on what we're doing today in trying to prevent collision. There are 1.3 million people that die every year on the road across the globe. And
Wow.
and for me, that's like a crazy number. It's really it's like a Boeing 747 falling from the sky every day. Now, obviously, that's not something that we'll be willing to live with, right? But we are kind of accustomed to this number, and I think that if we could manage to make a dent in those numbers, I'll be a very happy bunny.
That's incredible. So over 1 million people die on the roads every year across the globe.
Yeah. So in 2014, NHTSA, the federal agency that's responsible for regulating the highways and driving in the U.S., published a report that analyzed this question and came to the conclusion that at least 80% of collisions could have been prevented or would be prevented if you deploy a massive vehicle-to-vehicle network. And that's the number we're going after. That's what makes us jump out of the bed in the morning. And the reason that number is not far-fetched, I'll try to convince you in that, is because if you take any collision that happened since the days of Henry Ford until now, and you give the drivers involved a warning of just 10 seconds, not more than 10 seconds, you can prevent all of these collisions. Okay, pretty much any collision that ever happened, barring heart attacks, you could prevent. And the challenge is that there's no technology on any vehicle that's on the road that can provide you with such a level of warning, right? The most that people can get if they buy a Tesla or they buy a Mercedes or something like that is 2 seconds of warning, because that's the line of sight that the camera or the radar see. Because typically we don't drive with a 5-second headway distance. That's not what we do. And the cool thing about the network is that it allows you to see beyond the line of sight. It allows you to see behind the corner. All of these things allow you to provide warnings that are significantly longer than just 2 seconds. You can go up to 5, 7, and even 10 seconds and prevent most of the collisions like that on the cheap.
Let's get away from some of the Nexar stuff, and let's just talk about kind of entrepreneurship in general. What is your favorite thing about being a founder of a high growth startup, and then what is your least favorite thing?
The favorite thing, I guess, is that I get to work with amazing people, and I get to work on exciting problems. It's basically, I think it's the greatest job someone can get, because what is a founder, right? A founder of a startup is someone that is believed by a team and investors in most cases, to find a very interesting and potentially important problem, and then bring together a team of great people that will try and tackle that problem. That's an adventure. That's how I see it. It's just one great adventure. It's a roller coaster adventure, as long as you choose the problems correctly. I think the biggest mistake that people do when they start startups is not choosing the right problem. Is choosing a problem that is typically too small and not imaginative enough. The way I really like the term moonshotting.
Right.
And the reason
Swing for the fences, right? Too many entrepreneurs are out there trying to hit singles or doubles. I mean, you guys are swinging for the fences.
Yeah. And the reason I think it's better to do that. I have a whole lecture that I give about moonshottings, but the crux of it is startups are hard no matter what. It's a roller coaster. You'll have days that you'll feel like you have the worst startup ever, and you're never gonna succeed. And you have days where you're like, on the top of the world. And anyhow, it's gonna be hard. It's not like when you're doing a small thing, it's gonna be easy. It's never easy. And because of that, it's better to work on something where when you have the hard stretch, when something bad happens, at least you have the mission and the sense of the importance of the problem to take you forward. So I think that's, even from a selfish perspective, it's better to work on large problems. But from my perspective, it's a great adventure. The largest issue, I think, that I have, or the hardest part of being a startup or doing a startup as a founder, is you are responsible for the focus. If there's one thing that you are responsible for, is to make the decisions on what will be the focus of the company for the next week, months, or year. And these are high beta decisions, and in general, you have too many opportunities, and you have to choose the stuff that you want to. You have to actually decide on the stuff that you want to, and that's one of the hardest things to do as a founder. It's a sort of a skill also. You have to actually have a practice. You have to practice it a lot and be very truthful with yourself. I find that to be the most kind of challenging or hard part of this game.
Okay. Last question here. What is the best piece of advice that any of your investors has given you so far? I mean, you have some pretty good investors. Slow Ventures, I'm really familiar with. I know that's run by Dave Morin and Kevin Colleran, who was one of the first employees at Facebook. So, I mean, these guys have invested in dozens, if not hundreds, of companies already. Either from them or one of your other investors, what stands out as a great piece of advice you've gotten?
I think the best piece of advice was to think exponentially. The challenge with people is that our way of thinking is linear. We are accustomed, evolution kind of bred us to think linearly, okay? So when we are in a situation, okay, we can think about how the situation will look like if it's 20% different or 30% different, But it's really hard to imagine what happens when you are 10x, 100x, 1,000x in a short time span. And with that, you really need to dress for success, right? You really need to prepare for success. Many times, startups start well, but then they fail in capturing the opportunity that they've unlocked, and someone else comes and kind of picks it up. So I think the important thing is to imagine a future where you've succeeded, in some sense, your KPIs, like you want to, in our case, it's hours driven, okay? So let's say we already are 100x larger than what we are now. What does that mean? Like, how do you build an organization right now so that it will be functional, it will be able to address that future? It doesn't mean that you're going to get that, but at least, if you will, you'll have the foundations to succeed.
Actually, we'll end on this last question. What is your number one business goal for 2017?
Number one business goal is to continue our growth path. Our number two business goal is start unlocking all of the data products that we have been building on top of the avalanche of data that we've been collecting, and start providing that as a value to the community around us.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for being a guest. Really appreciate you coming on and telling us more about Nexar and what you guys are doing to improve road safety for all of us. Wish you guys the best, this year and of course moving forward. And as things continue to grow and you want to come back and tell us more, feel free.
Thank you.
I will talk to you soon, man. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.